All right, well, hello. This is a unit lesson plan on vocabulary for cooking that utilizes the project-based style, and through it, students will be learning new vocabulary for cooking terms and will be culminating their unit by putting together and recording a cooking show. So this unit plan also follows Nation's four uh, strands of language learning. Lesson one, of course, focuses on meaning focused input. The purpose is giving students an introduction to language and the vocabulary. So for the first activity, beforehand, you would want to identify a vocabulary list. You can find one online, you can create your own. Included here in the presentation are some links to websites that have a list of common cooking terms. You could use that as a good starting point, but point is you have a good vocabulary. And to just simply introduce the vocabulary, you'll have a presentation where you'll put the English terms and the terms in their first language, Spanish, Japanese, whatever, next to each other. It gives students a chance to read through this, read through it with them, just simply introduce them to these of the vocabulary, and this is the words, what they mean. So activity two, for this one, you're going to need some note cards, but you're going to have the students make some flashcards. They're going to take what you showed them in the first activity, and on one side they're going to write the English word, on the other side they're going to write the word in their first language. And once they've succeeded in creating these flashcards, they will then team up with a partner, and will quiz each other using the flashcards. Then our third activity, we're going to show them a cooking show example. I included here in the presentation is a link to a clip from one of Rachel Ray's presentations, but you could really use just about any decent cooking show clip you can. And this is going to be to kind of introduce them to the project, show them what is a cooking show, what is a cooking demonstration, get them familiar with what that is and what we're going for the project. And then finally, we're going to introduce the project. Beforehand, you as a teacher are going to want to gather some recipes and then gather the students into groups of 3 or 4 students per group and provide each group with a recipe. That group will then put together a script for the show, record themselves doing the show prior to lesson 5, and submit the video to be presented in class. And then, what if you have extra time? Sometimes that happens. So some ways to fill in the gaps, you could allow them some time to discuss the project, get some preliminary ideas, begin working on developing that script, begin developing what they're going to do, or have them quiz each other some more on the flashcards, get to learn the vocabulary that much better. So lesson number 2 focuses on the meaning focused output, giving students a chance to use the new vocabulary in a meaningful way. So our first activity, it's called What Is It? This is a variation on the listen and do activity. And what you'll do is you'll present the students starting off with just 2 pictures. For example, cake and spaghetti. And you will present them with a list of descriptors using some of the vocabulary you provided at the beginning of the lesson. For example, I bake this at 350 degrees for 20 minutes. Or I boil this until the pasta is al dente. I measure out 2.5 cups of flour in order to make this. At the end of each description sentence, the students then will try to identify which item do they think you're describing. And we'll go up to the board and provide a mark next to the picture of the thing that they think you are describing. And once you feel they've gotten it down with just 2, you can add a third, a fourth, whatever. Theoretically, this could go on really long, but be careful you don't overdo it, don't overwhelm your students. Just simply focus on maybe one or two items and give them, well, two items to start off with, maybe three, four, cut it off there. Give them a chance to practice listening and identifying by the picture what item you are describing. Activity number 2 is a classic fill in the blank. You'll provide students with a word bank and a list of sentences to fill in. Here is an example of one such word bank and a few sentences. Give them this activity and give them an opportunity to go through the words, through the sentences, fill in the blanks, and afterwards go through them and let what were the correct answers? Let students keep track. What did they get right? What did they get wrong? Even give some pushback if they seem to think that the pushback is, necessary or that there's a different word that possibly could have worked. And just discuss it with the students, help them to understand what were the correct answers and why. Activity number 3, script writing for a cooking show. This activity is another step in the process of the final project. Here, students are going to be working on the script for the cooking show. And while they're working on the script, you as a teacher walk around the classroom, answer any questions they might have, and keep track of any issues you are noticing. And towards the end of the activity, bring the students together and address in a general sense what parts did you notice a common theme of struggling with, what parts did they do better, what parts did not do so well, things like that. And then homework, they have to write their script for the show and submit it electronically before the following lesson, one script per team. Additional activity if time allows, just give students time to work on their homework. So lesson number 3, this one focuses on language-focused learning. This is where students are going to be focusing on how to properly and accurately use the language features. So our first two activities are meant to occur simultaneously at the same time. Both can take at least 30 minutes or more. With activity 1, each group will pair up with another group and will give a practice demonstration. This one just kind of pretending, imagining that you have the food and the items there. They're not really going to be there. The point is they're practicing the script, practicing what they're going to say, practicing what they're going to do. And the team that's not practicing will be paying attention and afterwards provide feedback to the student, to the other group. What went well, what didn't go so well, using the concept of negotiation of meaning to help each other improve the quality of their presentations. And then once they're done, they'll switch. Ideally, the presentations will be 4 to 5 minutes apiece with 5 minutes for feedback from the other group. But because this other activity that's going to provide gaps, that's why we get the 30-minute time. And then the second activity, teacher feedback. Have the groups come over for 5-minute long sessions apiece and go over the script with the students. Now, in activity 1, the focus is supposed to be on being understandable and being clear in the communication. Therefore, activity number 2, to provide a more rounded feedback, focus more on accuracy. Are they using the vocabulary well? Is their grammar understandable? Are they following the rules of English? Granted, you can overdo it, be careful, but ideally, the one activity will give them feedback focused on clarity, one on accuracy, and balance between the two, you'll get a more fluent sounding presentation, ideally. Activity number 3, debrief. Again, just get the class together, go over what were some common things that you noticed, strengths most of the projects had, weaknesses most of the projects have, how they can be improved, what made them good, and give a chance for questions. What did they find easy about activity number one? What did they find hard? What parts of the activities were helpful or not so much? Make it a dialogue designed to holistically improve the overall project. In homework, students are to record the cooking show and submit the recording prior to lesson. Additional activities if time allows. Additional cooking show examples. Bring in some extra clips like you did with lesson one and show these off to the students. These are more examples of what a good cooking show looks like. And better yet, if this is your second, third, just not your first time doing this unit, you can even bring in saved shows from previous lessons. A balance of good examples and bad examples, and discuss, okay, this is what makes this presentation a good presentation. This is what this makes presentation a bad presentation. And script editing. You can even have the students do this during those gaps when the other team is having their teacher feedback session, but just give students time to work on editing the script, making it better, fine-tuning it. Lesson number 4 deals with fluency development, which is to refine the knowledge we gained in lessons 1 through 3. We're going to be doing that through a blend of note-taking and games. And activity 1, note-taking on a cooking show. So you're going to need another cooking show video clip and show it to the class. And tell the class that they will be watching the clip and taking notes. And while they're going through it, they're supposed to record what vocabulary they use along with the tense and form that it's used. So, for example, if one of the vocabulary words is chop, but you heard chopped, the past tense form, write it in the past tense form. And then when it's done, give about a short, maybe 2 or 3 sentence summary of the cooking show. And then afterwards, you can go through it with the class and discuss what were the vocabulary that was in it, what was it talking about, and give students a chance to follow along in their own notes, see what did they do well, what did they do not so well, where do they need to maybe focus a little more attention. Now, activities 2 and 3 are both game ideas. Do one or the other. Chances are you will not have time to do both. Activity number 1, vocab Jeopardy. Beforehand, identify 25 vocabulary terms and come up with Jeopardy-style questions. The question would be the definition of the word, and then the answer would be what is, say, bake? What is chop? What is saucepan? What is knife? Things like that. And put them into 5 categories with different point values, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, etc. And have each team take turns selecting a question. They get it right, they earn that many points. They get it wrong, they lose that many points. And then for a little added fun, maybe offer like 5, 10 points extra credit on the final project to the members of whatever team wins. And when the question is asked, have each team have a designated spokesperson. And after the question is asked, they have time to discuss, and the spokesperson then will share the actual answer. Then activity 3, bingo. A little more simple, just provide your students with a bingo card and markers and have them write vocabulary in all the blank squares. And then you can either read off the definition of words or the words in the first language, and they have to identify the English word or the word being defined. And when they get a bingo, have them read back the words partially to verify that indeed they are accurate and correct, and also to give them a chance to practice not just listening but also speaking the words. And once a student has won, have them clear their boards and start a new game. For additional fun, you can maybe offer small prizes like a piece of candy for winning, or even switch it up and do different forms of bingo like traditional, diagonal only, four corners, blackout, whatever. An additional activity, if time allows, just give an opportunity for last minute feedback. Just a little last minute, ask clarifying questions, common problems, questions to help improve the project, things like that. And the fifth and final lesson is designated to presentation. That's not right. So, so basically in this project, we are going to present our videos. And when one team will show their video, and everyone while the other teams are showing their videos, like we did in lesson 4, they're going to take notes. What vocabulary did they hear? Provide a 2 or 3 sentence summary of the video that they saw, and we'll go through them one at a time. And then the grading will be 2 parts. It'll be 150 points in total. 100 points will be for the actual presentation. How well did their team do? Were they accurate? Were they understandable? Things like that. The other 50 points will be for listening and listing the vocabulary that the other teams use and the summaries. Now be lenient if they get most of the vocabulary, and if they're at least in the ballpark on the summaries, give them the full 50 points. If they're way off, start deducting them. But if they're at least close, fine. And if you have time at the end, just give some last minute feedback. Discuss the projects in a general sense, what went well, what didn't go well, what were some issues you saw, things like that. Just how did the project go on a big picture level? So that is the activity or the unit that is on cooking, teaching cooking. So good luck. I hope this does well for you, and I look forward to your success. Thank you.